Hey guys, Josh Linville here, Vice President of the Fertilizer Division for StoneX Financial Inc. FCM Division. And sorry if I'm a little hoarse this week. Lost my voice here over the weekend and just now starting to get it back. Been trying not to talk too much, but we're working to get her back. But this is the weekly YouTube fertilizer video, and this week decided to dive in on the global potash market. Now, potash is a market that typically doesn't see a lot of volatilities like what we've seen in the phosphate, what we've seen in the nitrogen market. That doesn't mean that we don't have prices moving up and moving down, but when you look at those prices, the price trends tend to take weeks, months, sometimes in history, years. We will see this thing cycle up and cycle down. So, actually, what we've seen over the last few years, this 21, 22, 23 period, has been a little outlandish, a little not normal for that marketplace. We don't think that's going to continue. We think that today prices have come down, they've stayed down, and we think that's going to become a little bit more normal. But that said, let's go ahead and go through some details. And just starting out, just to give you a little bit of a sense, it's a decent sized global marketplace. Now, 2022 was a little bit of an outlier, obviously, with all the events that were going on during that time. But when you look at it, you're talking about 73, 74 million ton produced back in 21, scaled back to 60. That has improved here as we got to 23, but it's a decent size. It's not quite nitrogen, but it's still good size. And as far as who are the major buyers, who are the ones that we track when we look around the world? Well, you look at Brazil. They are the biggest buyer out there. China has been number two. China has been on a buying spree here in the last, say, year and a half. Then you get the US, and all of a sudden it falls off pretty quickly after that. But just to give you a sense, when we talk about potash, these are the countries that we talk about that make so much of a difference around the world. They can really ebb and flow this marketplace just in their own power. And then who are the sellers? This list is relatively short, and you notice it's dominated by one party. That's Canada. And so this just gives a little bit of sense. This is a graph actually Mike and Quan put together. It shows the 22 and the 23 side by side. You look at Canada, those exports, I'm sorry, yeah, those exports jumped a couple million ton. Russia, significantly higher. That's going to be something we talk about. But back in 2022, we thought we were going to lose everything from Russia as far as fertilizer went because they invaded Ukraine. Not the case. Not only did we not lose them, they exported a significant amount more. And we've seen that across all the fertilizers. Belarus used to be about the same as Russia. Russia would typically be around 10 million ton. Belarus would be right there, just under 10 million ton. Well, 4 and 5 million ton. We'll talk about why that's still the case. People don't understand that Israel is the fourth largest exporter of potash in the world. And you start to think about what's going on between them and Hezbollah and Iran. All of a sudden, these situations can get out of hand. Then Laos has all of a sudden become a major player out there. So there's a lot to talk about on the export market. A lot of things are improving, but there's still some things we need to be worried about. So, what are those supply issues? Number one is that Belarus is still largely landlocked. I'll explain why that matters here shortly. Number two is Canadian rail strike threats. If all of a sudden rail shuts down, they can't move potash. Well, why does that matter? Logistically speaking, it's devastating. And then number three, Israel versus some of the Middle East. If all of a sudden they get into war with even more of that Middle Eastern region, we've got to start wondering, what does potash look like after the fact? So starting this list off, Belarus, right there in the middle of that map. And you notice they are landlocked, but that's never been a problem before. They were exporting 9, 10 million ton a year with very little issue. What they would do is they would ship their product up through Lithuania and out to the sea using their deep sea ports. Well, when Russia decided to invade Ukraine, Belarus took Russia's side. It basically said, you can use our land to invade Ukraine from the north, to go after Kiev and places like that. The rest of the world didn't like that. Belarus had sided with Russia. Lithuania had sided with the West. In Lithuania, I think it was, I'm going off memory here, but it was February back in 22. The Lithuanian government basically said, fine, if that's what you're going to do, if that's how you're going to support them, you're dead to us. They shut down all avenues of transit. They took all of their property that was owned within Lithuania. They shut it down. And Belarus was locked in. They couldn't go to the north because all of their routes had gone through Lithuania. They weren't going to go through west because that's Poland. Poland is certainly siding with the west on this one. They weren't going to go through the south. I'm guessing Ukraine, the country they actively opened their borders to allow Russia to invade them, they're not going to let them go that way. And the logistics they don't exist to go through Russia in a very big way, not to keep them at the 9, 10 million ton market that they had been. Now, When you look at 21, like I said, 9.9 million tons is what they exported. 22 that fell to 4.2. So they were still getting some tons out, but it fell significantly. They were the third largest exporter in the world, and they just completely fell out of bed. So we talk about some of these things that happened in 2022. This is a big one. This is something that it severely impacted the market. This is 5+ million tons of potash that just went missing. Now, we do think that they are going to continue to build new alternate routes to make their way to sea. We have heard that they're working their way up towards St. Petersburg, trying to build that. They've been working rail going over to China, but it is still a shell of them former selves. Number two, Canadian rail strike possibility. Now, I'm really hoping this is a short term event. I'm hoping this doesn't happen. I really hope both sides get what they are looking for and we can put this story to bed. Unfortunately, that may not be the case. When you look at Canada, these little blue circles that you see, that's where the potash production sits. It's not over here on the west on the water. It's not over here east around the Great Lakes or anything where they can get ships out to sea from. They are landlocked. They are reliant on rail shipments. They don't have the river system like what we have here in the US. And so when you sit there and look at it, if all of a sudden the rail shuts down, and I'm not talking, if it shuts down for a few days, we're going to be devastated. I'm not saying that, guys. But if we see a work stoppage that lasts for weeks and weeks, I don't believe that will be the case. I think cooler heads will prevail. I think negotiations will work. I think both sides want to continue to operate. They don't want to shut this thing down. The Canadian government doesn't want this to shut down. So I think that common ground will be found. But the world's biggest exporter, it's a possibility. It's something we need to watch. Like I said, Israel versus Iran versus Hezbollah versus all these places. This continues to be an issue. Now, fortunately, when you think about how they are attacking Israel, they're not going after that kind of infrastructure. They're going after people. They're looking for the political hits. But the potash manufacturing right there for the taking. They could send missiles and try to attack that. And if all of a sudden they hit the supply lines, they hit the mines, they hit the production facilities, all of a sudden, guys, we wake up the next morning and the fourth largest exporter in the world is gone. So there are some supply issues with potash that we do need to continue to watch because, again, it's a relatively small market in terms of the numbers of players that are out there. Otherwise, we do continue to see potash being a well-supplied market going forward. Laos is a country, their production has continued to increase. That's been helped by Chinese investments. Russian production, I already talked about this, about how their production has actually increased since 2022 after that invasion started. In Canadian production, we continue to see increasing here with new mines coming online. So looking at Laos, and that is the country right there that's kind of bordered in red. Trust me, don't worry. I didn't know where it was before I pulled up a map either. I'm from the US. I have very little knowledge of the rest of the world, but that's where Laos sits. And China's up here. And remember, China's a major, major buyer of potash, the second biggest last year. But a lot of that product has had to come from countries that are basically from the West, and they don't like that. Laos has potash reserves. Laos has been growing their capacity. And what has China been doing? They're trying to disconnect themselves from the West and they want to increase their sphere of influence around themselves. You kill two birds with one stone by doing this, by investing in Laos. You disconnect yourself from the West and you've just all of a sudden made yourself a very, very nice partner that sits right next door. It's one less country that you need to worry about. So they are continuing to help them grow this, continue to increase their annual exports, and they're a big, big recipient of it. And again, look at what's gone on with China here over the years. You look at Canada, they're this green part of the pie chart. Go back to 22, they were about 30.7%. 23, they were only 16.8, about 17%. Now, this one on the left, this is 2024. So this is only January through June. But Canada, still only 20% of the imports. So Canada is still far behind what they used to be. Who's picking up the slack, guys? Well, look at Laos. That has been growing. That is becoming a bigger part of it. Russia is becoming a bigger part of it. Belarus is becoming a bigger part of it. All part of the BRIC alliance. Well, maybe not Laos, but you start to see they are finding new partnerships. They are establishing new supply partners around the world. So that is changing global trade patterns. Russia and Canada, when we talk about production rates, like I showed you, Russian exports have actually been increasing since the invasion. In Canada, we continue to see more production coming online. Now, not to the extent of what we thought we were going to see back in 22. There was a lot of mines that were announced, and oh, all these people are going to do it. Well, it's very easy when it's almost $1,000 a ton. Now that things have calmed down, a lot of those investments have walked away and said, yeah, no, we've decided to go somewhere else. But there is a little more production that is coming. Maybe some more increases are coming. So that is going to continue to boost their export rates as well. But overall, potash is a marketplace that when I look at it, when we look at it, we look at the production increases that we think are going to continue to outpace demand. That means this market becomes more and more well supplied. And a well supplied market doesn't tend to have a lot of volatility and actually keeps the prices down because everybody's fighting for the same tons. And that's what we see. Potash supply should continue to be adequate to anywhere from adequate to plentiful, bordering on oversupplied going forward. That should mean lower prices, more aggressive prices. That should mean less volatility. That's a win for the farmer. It's not nearly as bad as what we see with the phosphate and the nitrogen. So hopefully this will kind of be the beacon of hope, if you will, for the inputs. So that's it on the potash. Kind of a short one here, but go over to StoneX and get a chance. We cover a lot of stuff in the world markets across the whole. It's not just agriculture. We're in every single futures market out. Not every single one. Compliance will love that statement. We're in a lot of future markets out there. So if you got questions, go to StoneX, see what we do. If you're not on Twitter, go find me at Linville. I try to always say this. It's a great place to go find a lot of information, see what other areas are doing. Go check it out. If you get on there and you like it, go find me. I try to put stuff out daily. And if you look at these videos and you're like, hey, I kind of like this, but I'd like a little more up-to-date information on what's going on, we do put out a monthly farmer newsletter. This is tailored to the farmer. This is trying to give the farmer information about one of the biggest costs per acre on their operation, trying to give you a little more information on what we think you ought to be looking for, what to watch for, things to point out, opportunities that could be seen. So if any of those interest you, go take a look at them. Otherwise, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Please leave comments, reach out, email, whatever. Let me know what you think, what else we can be hitting on. So thank you much, and we'll talk to you next week.